All right, we've been combining shapes to make more complex things, but let's see what we need to do to make multiples of a shape in specific ways. For this, I'm going to be using the array tools. Now, there are multiple ways of making different arrays, and let's have a look at some of those. The first one will be a rectangular array, and that's if I want to create multiples of the same object, but on a 2 or 3-dimensional plane. So I'm going to start by creating a circle right there. If I want to create multiples of this circle, but in a 2-dimensional space, I could use the rectangular array tool. So I'm going to select that. Now it asks me, how many objects do I want in the X direction? Now I can see what the X direction is by looking at my tab down here. My axis for this window is labeled Y and X. Now if I get all of my viewports visible, you'll see in my perspective viewport, you'll see which axis is which. There's X, Y, and Z. So I want, let's say, 10 objects in the X direction, which means left to right in my top viewport. So I'm going to say 10, hit enter. How many objects in the Y direction? Now, in my top viewport, that's top to bottom, Y. So I'm going to type in 10 as well. And how many objects do I want in the Z direction? So technically, that is in my front viewport, up and down. Let's say 3. Type in 3. Hit enter. Now it tells me unit cell spacing for X direction. In other words, how far do I want these parts set apart? Now right now I know they're 20 millimeters in diameter. So I'm going to type in 20. Hit enter. Cell spacing for Y, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say 20. Hit enter. And Z spacing, I'm going to make that 40 to see what I get. And there we go. Now you'll see these circles almost touch because they're spaced 20 millimeters apart, but you'll also see I've now made a stack of those. So if I want to have just one layer of those, let's go back. I'm going to say I'm not quite happy with that. Number in the X direction, number in the spacing in the X direction, number in the Y direction, and spacing in the Y direction. I want to change the Z. Number in the Z direction. I'm going to click that and say only 1. Enter. And I'm going to hit enter again. Number in the Z direction, 1. Number in the Z direction, 1. Oh, it doesn't seem to want to save that. Okay, I'm going to redo that section. I'm going to select those and delete. Delete that, delete that, delete that. There's a whole stack of them now. Delete those. I'm going to redo that one. I'm going to say rectangular array. This object, I want 10 in the X direction, 10 in the Y direction, and only 1 in the Z direction. And I'm going to keep my spacing the same. So it's 20, enter, 20, enter. And there we go. Now we have a single layer. So if we want to have a single layer in our top viewport, we just have to make sure that our Z spacing, or number in the Z direction, is only 1. And there we go. So that is the rectangular array. Now, there are other forms of arrays. I'm going to make another copy of that. I'm going to draw a circle here. And I'm going to start from the center of this circle and draw a circle diameter. Make sure my center snaps on. So I draw a circle out this way, like this. And I'm going to create a polar array, or use the polar array to draw a flower-like shape. So I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to say, under my array tools, polar array. Now, it asks me center of polar array. I'm going to make it the center of this circle. How many items do I want? How many copies of the selected circle do I want? I'm going to say 8. Enter. And then in a 360-degree spectrum, how much of that circle do I want it to cover? Now, I want those to be all the way around, so I'm going to type in 360 and hit enter. So it made 8 copies in a 360-degree circle around that center point. I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit enter. And there we go. I've made a polar array. Now I can get busy and actually select those and use my trim tool to get rid of all of the excess stuff I don't need or want. Like that. There we go. So I've made an interesting flower-like design using my polar array tool. And then lastly, the other array tool that I find quite useful is the array along a curve. So let's see what that does. First, I need a curve to array along. So I'm going to draw a curve with either the control point curve or the curve and interpolate points tool. I'm going to go ahead and create a nice wavy line like this. And I'm going to draw a circle right at the end of it, a little one, like that. Now I'm going to get multiple copies of this. I'm going to make multiple copies of this along this curve. So I'm going to say array along a curve. Select the object, which is the circle, and then selected the wrong way around, I apologize. Select the objects to array, this one, enter. Select the curve or path, this one, and you'll see it creates an array of them along this line. But I can define how many I want by typing in there number of items. So I'm going to click that and say I only want 15. And now I only have 15 arrayed along that line. I can make that anytime I want, or I can alter the spacing between them. So if I want 20 millimeters between each circle, I can simply type in 20 and hit enter. Now there's 20 millimeters between each repetition of that circle. So that's array along a curve. Now these tools are very handy when creating much more complex shapes to do specific things. All right, thank you.